Many thanks for joining us right here on KBC Channel 1. My name is Mike Migu. We're still watching Good Morning Kenya. Now, away from politics, we look at matters, education. And today we are looking at how we can understand the CBE transition and the pathways therein. And in studio, I'm joined by Mark Anderson, who is the founder and principal of Core Academy. Welcome to Good Morning Kenya.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Karibu sana. And also Catherine Mwathani, who is a coordinator at Core Academy. Welcome to Good Morning Kenya.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Let's get right into it. You look at CBE, Mark, and from your own perspective, do you think really Kenyans do understand what it's all about?
It's a really important question, Mike. When we think about a shift like this, it's a very significant shift for the education sector in Kenya. And with significant shifts, there always comes confusion, misunderstanding, and I think getting the parents on board and getting the schools on board to help them really understand what is this, what is the new curriculum built around, what's its philosophy, what's its implementation going to be, I think is really critical. And so I think people are probably at various stages of understanding. Some people probably understand a lot about it, and some people are probably in the dark and quite fearful about the change. And so the more we understand it and unpack it, I think the better for everyone.
Catherine, how do you think it should be approached so that everybody is on the same page when it comes to understanding what the CBE is all about?
That's a very good question, Mike. And I think it should start from who are the providers of this CBC curriculum. Do we all understand it as educators, as teachers? So is there relevant, continuous education for first the people in the industry? And then moving from there, it's also having forums like this to just educate parents to really understand what exactly are we doing when it comes to education. When we say it's project-based, what does that mean? How does it involve a parent? And how will they be required to support the process as we transition? So I guess it's an all-round involvement from the Ministry of Education, involving the teachers and parents, everybody on board.
Like all the stakeholders.
Exactly, yeah.
Very important. And Mark, when you look at CBE and 844, the comparison, what do you think CBE is, what do you think is the problem that it's coming to solve that the 844 failed to achieve?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because that's why it's here. We have to understand what the purpose is. And educationally, its philosophy is very sound. When we look at the significant differences between the CBE and the old system, what we're moving towards is something that's a lot more based on outcomes that are rooted in soft skills. So skills development, particularly from the younger grades, less siloing of subjects, and less of a focus on content memorization and more of a focus on, do I really understand the content and can I apply it to the real world around me? That's a critical skill for our young people today. And the old systems of education, if we look globally, not just in Kenya, if we look over the last 40, 50 years, our global systems of education have lent towards very narrow tracks for our students to follow, where from a young age, they're working on limited content and they're memorizing a lot of information. That was critical before the internet, right? Before we could search something on Google, we had to memorize it and remember it and repeat it. Now, what's much more important is, what do we do with the information? How do I use it? How do I apply it? And so those skills are much more important. So we've seen this shift in several countries towards something that's a little bit more competency-based rather than memorization-based.
Still, when you look at CBE and other systems of education, like the British system of education, are there similarities or stark differences between the two systems?
So in terms of educational philosophy, very similar. When we look at how things are implemented, if you start digging into the curriculum documentation, there are going to be differences. There are significant differences in any curriculum that you look at from any country around the world. But if I look at what's happening, not just in the UK, but in Southern Africa, in Southeast Asia, to a certain degree in the West, we see a shift towards this sort of thinking where understanding and application is valued much higher. And so at the heart of it, it's actually very similar to the UK system in terms of what it prioritizes and values for our students.
You know, when you look at CBC, Catherine, and on paper it does feel very good, but when you look at implementation, what do you think how can we overcome the challenges that we have seen, especially when you look at the transition to senior school?
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges and that has currently happened is, as we've seen, students graduating from grade 9 to 10 and just wondering where to go.
Yes.
And that has been maybe a little bit shake up in the industry on where to go. And I think that as Ministry of Education, if we are able to handle this, if it will be a greater support for parents to know, do we have enough facilities to handle the students that are moving towards senior school or high school, or do we have enough support? Do we have enough equipment to support the different pathways? So I guess that will be one of the ways that this can be supported, so that at least all children are able to get education, because at least education, every child should be able to access education in this country. So if that is handled well, then the transition will be smooth. For new things, as new things happen, definitely there will be shake-ups, and I think it's okay to have these shake-ups, because during these shake-ups then we get to know what are we meant to do. And this being our first lot of students also transitioning to grade 10, it has helped the education industry or sector to just know what exactly, how do we need to prepare next before the next students move up, how do we need to, so mainly just understanding what is happening on the ground and being able to meet the challenges.
So actually whatever we have witnessed will be a very good springboard to launch changes that will deal with the problems that we have seen.
Exactly.
Now, you know, Mark, you look at the system, it's anchored on competencies. We are talking about communication, soft skills, collaboration, critical thinking, and by extension, problem solving. How do you see that being embedded in all learning areas?
Yeah, this is a very tricky thing to tackle in real life. The reason that it's so important is because we've come to realize more and more that soft skills are really the drivers of success in the real world. You know, you've got hard skills, which are methods or steps that you learn to solve particular problems. So long division is a good example of a hard skill. I learn where to put the numbers and how to divide. Changing the changing the tire on my car is a hard skill. I learn the steps that I need to take to replace the flat. Soft skills, on the other hand, we're talking about very nuanced skills that often relate to people or information, like critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, the ones that you've mentioned that the CBE really emphasizes as being important. We've always known that soft skills are critical, but they're more important now than ever. You think about the world that our kids are growing up in, it's changing faster than ever. And what's going to help them succeed in the long run, whatever industry or career they go into, is whether they're able to think critically, problem solve, collaborate with each other, communicate their thoughts effectively. Hard skills are still important. You know, when I climb on a plane, I don't want my pilot Googling how to take off the plane on the runway. But when it comes to that pilot's long-term success in life, that's actually going to be driven by soft skills. And so that's why the system emphasizes those. The tricky part with that is it's much easier to teach long division than it is to teach creativity and communication. Soft skills are only learned through practice, reflection, and repetition. I get to try it, I get to think about it, I get to talk about it, and then I get to try it again. That's how we improve our soft skills. And that's very difficult to implement practically in a classroom. And even more importantly, it's very difficult to assess in a classroom. How do you test creativity? How do you test collaboration? And so when you spoke just now about implementation risks, Catherine spoke wonderfully from the perspective of a parent, as somebody whose own children have gone through the system. And from my perspective as a principal, I look at the implementation risks as being more about how do we prepare our staff for this? As a principal, how do I take an academic faculty of 50, 60 teachers and change their thinking around what we're testing, what we're teaching, how we're testing it, how we're teaching it?
Which now brings the aspect of retooling.
Yes, absolutely. And so all of that plays into what's going to come down to how well are we preparing our schools and their leaderships to be able to implement those sorts of things. And professional development is going to be key. And there's going to be some teething problems along the way.
Yeah.
There always will be. It's a big ship that has to turn. And when a big ship turns, it takes time. But it's an important course to set.
Catherine, you look at on the system, there's now an enhanced, so to speak, presence or involvement of parents. Why is that important?
A very good question that maybe some of us parents would like to run away from. But I think, like I like the old saying, a child is formed by a village.
Yes, it takes a village.
Yeah, or yes, it takes a village, yeah, to raise a child. And exactly that is what I think is coming into shape, because we do not only want teachers to be the sayers in how a child grows up, but also the parents. And we are just stewards as parents, so we need to be involved in every bit of it. I know we are busy as parents, but again, we also should be involved in how is my child growing. We should be the first ones, actually, even before the school recognizes what's happening to my child. I should be the first one who should have observed that. And I think CBC is drawing parents to be partners in this journey as we mold our children. Yes, we may have students who go to day schools, others to boarding schools, but in a way, CBC is trying to involve parents to come on board and own this education journey for our children together. And I think it's an amazing way of raising our generation, because if a teacher who is handling my children during the day is able to let me know how the day was, then I'm also able to let them know maybe what my child is going through, and I'm able to support my child with all the required materials. Then I guess we are building a generation that will be powerful. Yeah.
That is very important, because, Mark, they are the pathways, and these are the areas that a student may bank on to propel them to the career that they want to take in higher learning. How do you see the parent perspective shaping that going forward?
Yes, Mike, if you think from the parent's perspective, we grew up in a world that was very linear. So if I'm 12 years old and I want to be an engineer one day, I start studying maths and physical science, chemistry, physics, and I follow that very tight linear pathway to university. And when I get to university, they say, what did you do in high school? And I say, I did maths and physical science and chemistry. And they say, great, you can do engineering. And then I become an engineer, and then I'm an engineer for 40 years. What's happening now is that we're seeing people's pathways in careers being more dynamic. So you think about somebody who graduates as an engineer. I have a friend who graduated as an engineer, worked for 10 years, became a senior engineer, and now he's working for the city municipality. Not as an engineer, but as an advisor for a team that's got an IT person and somebody who's actually from the arts and somebody who's from the social sciences. And we're seeing teams in the real world that are a lot more cross-dimensional, cross-disciplinary, that are collaborating together to solve problems, because we're realizing our real world problems are dynamic. They're not just engineering problems. They're not just art problems. So if we backtrack that to high school and junior school and we think, what is the CBE trying to do? We used to have very siloed subjects, very narrow subject bands. And so you would walk out of geography class and you would walk into chemistry class, and you would walk out of chemistry into maths. And what we're trying to do with CBE now is say, well, let's group together like-minded subjects so that we can have more cross-pollination. And so you've got arts and sports together, and you've got the STEM subjects together. So in STEM, you've got science and technology and engineering and arts and maths, all speaking to each other and working together. And so the teacher is able to bring in much more real-world examples of what we're going to face in careers one day. And what you find is that students who, when they were 12, used to think, I'm going to be an engineer, they start realizing, hey, hang on, I think I actually might want to go a different route, but they're not locked into that singular pathway.
So actually, from what you're saying, it's opening up the students' mind into looking at the possibilities.
Absolutely. It's giving them more exposure to the fact that the world is dynamic rather than narrow and linear. And it's also giving them an opportunity to test things out and try. I mean, I changed majors when I got to university. I was very convinced on what I was going to do, and I changed tracks.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful opportunity for our students to be exposed to more things, even up through high school. And I think universities are realizing that as well. Yes. And so if you look at what a university is looking for now, 20 years ago, they wanted top marks in specific subjects.
Yes.
Now they still want top marks, don't get me wrong. Top marks are still very important. But what universities are becoming more and more interested in is, who are you? What type of student are you? Are you the type of student that we want at our university? And again, that's a soft skills question, not so much a hard skills question.
Very important. You know, looking at junior school, because now we have junior school, this is where humanities, sciences, life skills, creative arts are introduced. What do you think is the goal? Is it a matter of specialization, or just trying to discover a student's talent early enough?
I think from my understanding, junior school is a place where you get to observe and see, because at that particular point, they're not choosing subjects yet. So like Mark said, they are getting exposed to the different subjects. So it will be STEM, it will be art and sports, it will be all of them bundled together. And somehow it's getting introduced at that level. So at junior school, they are able to see the different options, so that when it comes to choosing their subjects, then they at least have an idea, what am I good at? What do I like doing? What do I want to be? And that's a discussion that starts as early as junior school, so that at least by the time they are going to high school, now they already know exactly, then this is the pathway I want to chase, this is the pathway I want to be into, and then they are able to specify. So I think junior school is giving students a space to realize who they are, cement, and they already know of the pathways they are getting into. So in a way, they are getting prepared. And you'll find students nowadays saying, this is what I want, not even without involving the parents, because that has they have already been exposed to these choices. So I think at that level, then like the question you had asked earlier, parents and teachers really need to partner to support their students, because at this level they are sure, today I want to be a lawyer, tomorrow I want to be an artist, but just giving them options to experiment all these things, so that at least by the time they move forward to secondary, they already at least are clear on which pathway they need to take.
Do you think there are conversations about CBE that we should be having, but we are not having, especially when it comes to parent involvement, the collaboration that you're talking about with teachers, so that by the time a student is coming to choose their career pathways, they know what they are doing?
That's a very good question, and I think it's handled differently. I wouldn't say there are conversations that are not being held, because there are people who are proactive and they're already talking. But in general, as a country, I think it's really important to continue having these conversations to educate. For example, I have parents who feel like, I don't even know what they are doing. I don't even understand what are these pathways. So I guess it will be wise to continue with this conversation, discussing pathways even before getting to, for example, grade 10, so that at least a parent knows, how do I prepare my child? How do I get involved? And also, a teacher also identifying a gift or a talent or a strength in a child and cheering them on, and being able to communicate this also back at home and saying, oh, so-and-so is really good at this. Have you considered this? And then that brings an opportunity to have these discussions. So I think the discussions, mainly it's from the foundation of a home, a school, and then also at a greater level in the education sector. So educating the citizens and the country, what exactly are we doing with all these changes, so that at least we are able. So I feel like conversations are already happening, but I think we need to do more to be able to educate everyone, in all stakeholders.
Mark, you look at this system, and when it comes to pathways and choosing the pathways, does it bridge the gap where the teacher knows the students more than the parents knows their kid who is going to school?
I think it depends on the parents, Mike. I really think, I mean, Catherine has said this comes right down to a foundational family unit level,
yes,
where if parents are engaging with their schools and schools are engaging with their parents, it's not just up to parents, it's also up to schools to be engaging them. It's a two-way conversation. If we're bringing parents on board and we're bringing them along on the journey, what a wonderful opportunity for our parents to be able to see their kids in more context, see them in different light, to be able to start discovering who they are with them. It's a big mind shift change for a lot of traditional parents from I'm going to trust the school to academically teach my child and then assess them at the end, to actually this is more about the journey. And the end point might not be as crystal clear. It's not just as simple as you got 82% for maths. We do get marks at the end, but the way that we arrive at those is what we call formative rather than summative. So the focus is not on a final end exam test mark. The focus is on the journey, the experience through the process. And the risk there for teachers is that if they're not well trained, they don't know how to implement that. And so there needs to be a lot of work with the teachers to make sure that they understand how to implement that. And then with the parents to bring them into the experience and the journey and say, come along with us and find out more about your child. Ask them questions along the way.
So it's more of an understanding, kind of assessing how a student understands the learning process, everything that is involved in between.
Yes. In education, there are a few different catchphrases over the years that people have used. We talk about project-based learning. We talk about inquiry-based learning. I'll give you a very practical example maybe so that parents can get a clear picture in their minds of what this might look like.
Yes.
We have a project at COA which is called the Business Expo. And what it essentially does is pull in elements of art and design, business and accounting, English, mathematics, and we've taken strands from different subjects and we've designed a task where the students have to use the design process to spot a real world problem around them and then design a business and launch a business to address that problem. Now, if you think about how that's different to traditional learning, in traditional learning, I'm going to tell you what you need to know, you're going to remember it, and then you're going to repeat it to me in a test. And if I've got 30 kids in my class, all 30 should give me the same answer. I don't always get the same answer from all 30, but I should get the same answer. But in this model, you think about that project, it's cross-curricular, so there's many subjects involved, and every one of those 30 students is going to see a different problem, and they're going to launch a different business to solve their problem. And so when I'm marking that as a teacher, I'm not marking just the final product. I'm sitting with them all along the journey and I'm saying, okay, unpack for me, what problem have you identified and why do you think that's important? And then we're having a discussion. It's a lot more one-on-one and it's a lot more integrated into the process, and they might get a little mark for that part of the project, and then we're moving on to solving some other part of it. Or have you been able to put your unit economics in place? Can you identify how much this is going to cost for you to solve it, and how are you going to price it? What's your price point going to be? Can you do that accounting properly? Okay, you're going to get some more marks for that. And so it's built into the process. It's a very different way of teaching and learning. From the child's perspective, you can imagine how much more immersive it is for them.
Yes. You know, you look at, still on the pathways, do you think this career guidance system that are there are strong enough to guide the students in making an informed pathway?
A very good question, and also to think more about it. But I'm also thinking we have enough resources and enough trained people. The thing is, do we have the burden to make this happen? How serious are we taking this? So I feel there's already resources available. There are already trained people in the education sector. We have very many people who would love opportunities. So I guess it's creating these opportunities to onboard people who will support this journey all through, educate people, consult the students, have these several meetings, whether it's in schools or continuous conversations on this. But the main question is, are we ready to take up this? Are we ready? Are we taking it seriously as it should be? And I guess there's a number of us who are trying, and there are others who are just flowing. But I think my encouragement would be if we can all get on board and just immerse ourselves in giving support, because counseling, and it's all about giving support and guiding, so that at least we are able to guide our students as they take this journey and in the transition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Mark, pathways that we are talking about, of course, they will lead to professionals and different career directions. But do you see them addressing unemployment in this way, aligning the education system more closely with the labor market needs? Or is it a case of overestimating that link?
Mike, I think there are probably three opportunities that we have here, and whether we leverage these opportunities or not comes down to the implementation piece. So how well we implement it, how well schools buy into it, parents buy into it, how well teachers are trained. I keep saying that's so critical. But if it's implemented well, there's some specific opportunities. One is that we're from a younger age not narrowing the focus and the scope of the students, and so we're keeping the opportunities wider, so that if there are opportunities in the market that pop up and they thought they were headed in one direction, but a different opportunity in the market presents itself, they're able to pivot. One of the things we say to our students all the time at COA is, you need to be both robust and flexible. How can you be both? How can you be strong and resilient, but also dynamic and moldable and changeable? And that combination of qualities is really important in a student. And if our curriculum has that combination of qualities, it's much easier for the students to be versatile and dynamic and respond to market needs. The second opportunity that I see for us here, when we think about responding to market needs and the changing world around us, is that idea of our students are going to be much more soft skill developed. So when they go out and they start applying to universities, you know, there used to be far fewer people applying for the number of seats that we have at universities, and then once they qualified, there were far fewer jobs available for the number of graduates. That's not true anymore. We've got many more high school graduates than we have university seats, and we've got many more jobs, many fewer jobs than we have university graduates. And so it's a strange bottleneck situation, but what this does is it gives the students the opportunity to develop soft skills that when they're in a situation like that, they ask themselves critical questions that help them to problem solve. And so you think back to that example I gave you of the business expo that we run.
Yes.
If a grade 4 is able to do that, identify a problem in the real world, come up with a solution, do the unit economics and start a business. If they're able to do that from grade 4, when they leave university and they can't find a job, they're not going to say, well, I don't know what to do now. They're going to say, well, what problems do I see in the world around me, and how do I address those? What can I do about that? And so the soft skill development, again, becomes a real driver for long-term success for the whole country. And what you see is that what benefits the individual and the family unit then spills over to the immediate community around them, and that's good for us.
You have taught in a different system of education.
Yes.
How different is it from CBE?
I think I would just go back again to what Mark said in the beginning. They are very similar. They are very similar. Their education approach is very similar. The only difference is how it's shared or how it's taught. So in the past, for example, whether it's international curriculums, it was more project-based or research-based, where students will go out and research on different topics and then come back and share within a class setup. So everybody has, like, for example, we all have the same topic, but then we go and in-depth and research, and as we research, everybody will come with different ideas that they have brought in. And I think that is very similar to what now CBE is doing, different from what we did in 844, because 844 was cramming, I need to pass an exam at the end. And right now we see involvement also in CBE, where children are sent out to do a research or to do an activity outside. I remember my son being sent to the market to sweep as a CBE activity.
Yes.
And that was just something new for him, you know. And so they get to see what exactly is happening in the real world. But I think also as we grow also in technology, there are more challenges that these children are very informed and they know. And so they have this space. So I would say their CBE and other curriculums are very similar, but the implementation is where the difference comes in. Again, also with resources, because CBE is a national curriculum, and everyone in Kenya deserves to have an experience or go to school and experiences. But we also have private schools that have maybe smaller numbers, and they are able to cater for that. So you find they could be doing something similar with a child who is in a remote place, but these private schools also have maybe more resources that they offer for their students, and that brings in the difference between the two approaches.
Which now Mark, brings the question of how do we ensure that this continuous assessment does not widen the inequality between well-resourced schools and under-resourced institutions?
You know, Mike, this is a monumental challenge when you have any type of change or are rolling out any sort of development, whether it's a technological advance or a pedagogical change. The inequality gap very often widens before it narrows. And that's something that everybody has to be proactively working against. And this really comes down to the two elements that we've spoken about quite often in this conversation: implementation and resourcing. And if the department is moving us towards CBE, then it's going to be critical for us to make sure that the implementation and resourcing focus is as much or more on the schools that really need it, the schools that don't have the resources or the technical know-how to be able to say, well, let's figure this out. We get the educational philosophy and it's sound, but if we're going to make this practically workable in our school, we've just got to we got to pull our socks up and get it done.
Yes.
There are schools that are really going to need support through this, both through allocation of resources and the teacher training element.
In the interest of time, let me give you each a chance to give your closing remarks, and I'll start with you.
First, I would like to say thank you very much for having us today, and also saying it's really important to continue having this discussion as we mold our younger generation. I'm happy that we have different options also in the market as this transition happens. And my encouragement for parents, especially parents, is do not be scared of what's happening. Get involved, get immersed, and then try and see what's right for your child and support them all through. For those who may not know what to do, I believe schools are open to continue having these discussions to support them. We have an amazing resource called the internet. We can immerse ourselves there, and Kenya is known as one of the countries that we are very busy online. So we can immerse ourselves there and see what are the different options out there. What do I wish for my child? And then get involved. For those who are in the education sector, like me, I would continue encouraging everyone to continue passing the word around, to continue educating, whether it's in a forum like this or whether it's on one-on-one. We need to pass the message around, and we need to stop looking at it as a burden, but a possibility that will transform our country.
Indeed. Mark?
Mike, I think my challenge, seen as Catherine has encouraged the parents, my challenge is for the schools, the school leadership and the teachers. Just as Catherine said, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity for our schools as well. And I would really encourage teachers in the same way. One of the most amazing things that we have in our arsenal is the ability to go and research and upskill ourselves in a way that previous generations didn't have. We think about technology is an amazing opportunity for us to leverage. I mean, Catherine and I come from a completely online school. It's something that we haven't seen in the past before. Teachers are able to upskill themselves similarly. Go and do some research, find some professional development. Go and look at where things like the CBE have been implemented in other countries around the world, and you'll find to varying degrees of success. Some have been very successful, some have been not successful. Go and do some research, find out why. What happened in the local schools that you could be an agent for change to drive success in this in the long run.
Before we close, how does COA contribute to make CBC successful?
I love that question. So if we think about all the things that we've spoken about, think about the soft skills and the versatility and the robustness with the flexibility, COA embodies those. I mean, Catherine and I are colleagues. Catherine lives in Kenya, I live in South Africa. We've got 800 students around Africa. We're not bound to a geographic location. All of us work entirely remotely. It's a very dynamic, versatile way to work, but we're able to leverage tools and platforms and resources that are so real-world relevant. And so what we're able to do is address a curriculum like the CBE or the South African CAPS curriculum, which is very different to the CBE, or the UK curriculum, and we're able to teach our students in a way that is very dynamic and real-world relevant. It's a very exciting place to be at the moment.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. Thank you so much for making time to come and talk about matters education. Mark Anderson is the founder and principal of COA Academy, and also Catherine Mothani is the coordinator of COA Academy.